Where do the Ravens go from here? We answer that and more of your mailbag questions next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we return here with another episode of Locked On Ravens. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire. We return here. It is an episode on Wednesday, December 29th, as we are coming up on the new year, 2022. I mean, how time flies. Seriously, how it does. And this Ravens team is 8-7. I know a long time we were talking about, before the 4 straight losses and everything. Oh, things are looking good. They have the injuries, this, that, and the other. And then the injuries have continued. They've been piling on. Now there are COVID cases, and the Ravens continue to add players to the COVID list. As yesterday, it was Tyus Bowser, an injured rookie defensive back, Darius Washington. The team did get back Chris Westry from the COVID list, so that is a piece of good news. But Bowser is definitely a pretty big loss if he will be unable to play, if he'll be unable to play in Week 17 against the Rams. So we'll talk a bit about that, of course, as the week goes on. But here today, since it is Wednesday, we're going to dive into our mailbag. We have a ton of mailbag questions here today. I really appreciate everybody who has asked before, who asked today, and whether it was today or another time down the line, I greatly appreciate it. And if you do want to submit your mailbag question, I put out a tweet every Monday evening, and you just comment under there, and I'll be sure to get to it here on a Wednesday show, on the show that is coming up on that Wednesday. So we have a ton. We'll do 3 full segments of mailbag questions. I'm excited to get into them because I kind of glanced over, and we have some good ones here today. So let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right in here. But before we do that, be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere there's a podcast where they're waiting. Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. Also, if you're here with us on YouTube, be sure to like the video here, subscribe to the channel here as well. I greatly appreciate everybody who has subscribed to the channel. We are trying to build this channel, get it in front of more Ravens fans and people who enjoy the Baltimore Ravens, of course, and even people who are fans of other teams to get the Ravens perspective of things. So, yeah, be sure to subscribe. I greatly appreciate it. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter at KarlStrecker34 and the Locked On Ravens account at Locked On Ravens. So with all that being said, we'll dive into it all here, starting off, as we will end it, of course, with mailbag questions. Let's start off here with a question from Perennial Cynic, who asks, do you think they found a gem in Isaiah Mack? I thought he was a bright spot in an otherwise painful game. And I was very impressed with Isaiah Mack. He's a player who was called up off the practice squad. I don't think a lot of people really knew who he was. I wasn't super familiar with him. I'm not going to lie and say, I knew all about Isaiah Mack. No, I didn't know a ton about him before he was called up. And that's just the season it's been for the Ravens, right? It's been, who's this guy? Why is he getting called up? We had him on this team. Fans are probably thinking along those lines. So I understand that. But look, it's important to understand that this team values depth, and for Mack, for all these different players on the practice squad, they only need one opportunity. And I agree. I'm very impressed with how Mack played. Should have had 2 sacks. It should have been 2, but at the end of the day, just got the 1. And with the Ravens, they're not necessarily completely shot and devoid of defensive line depth when they're completely healthy, but as has been a theme for the Ravens this year, they're not completely healthy. So when guys go out like Justin Madubuike, who was on the COVID list, or Brandon Williams misses a couple games, or Calais Campbell isn't 100%, you need those guys to step up, and I think Mack did a really good job. So I think that they could try to bring him back, maybe sign him to a futures deal and see what they can do with him over the course of the 2022 offseason, heading into training camp and everything. But I think he, even just off that one performance, he proved that he deserves more of an opportunity, just to see if it's that for him, see if he is that type of player or not. But I think he performed well in Week 16 against Cincinnati. Our next question here comes from, it's Lamar's season, and should the Ravens pack it in this season to get healthy for next year, or try and win to get into the playoffs? And this has been a very popular question. It's almost like the where do the Ravens go from here factor. And, look, I've asked it myself. I'm sure the Ravens have asked it themselves. And I came to the very quick conclusion of they should not pack it in. They should keep on going. I think there are multiple reasons why. And look, there are pros and cons to both, but I think the cons of just giving up far outweigh the pros. look, you maybe get a 2-spot better draft pick or 3-spot better draft pick. The guys, if you're resting them, there's no risk to get injured in a football game. I get that, but you don't necessarily have to go full tank mode. And if the Ravens feel like a guy like Lamar Jackson isn't going to be healthy enough to play in week 17, they're not going to play him, but they're also not going to just give up on their season and say, let's go get the 14th pick as opposed to the 22nd pick. I think, look, yeah, it's an 8-pick difference, but at the same time, I do think about the cons of kind of going with that message to a team that's fought so hard, that's been through so much. What realistic response would that give if John Harbaugh, let's say, were to go up to them and say, you know what, guys, it's been a great season, but we're down so many guys right now. We don't think we can win with the guys we have, so we're going to pack it in and work to next year. I think that sends a terrible message. I mean, you want to have the trust of those guys in the locker room, and it's something you build, right? When things get tough, especially for a team like the Ravens, they're not going to just pack it in and say, you know what, let's just go for next year. I think the Ravens, as they've shown time and time again this year, are a team that's going to say, you know what, our backs are against the wall. Let's get it. Let's do it. And so when people look ahead to the offseason, look, I've done it before. I'm sure many other people have done it before too. It's stuff like that. But at the same time, I don't think it sends a good message whatsoever if the team was just to come out and say, you know what, yeah, we're done. We're going to tank the rest of the games. And it's somewhat hard to do that to an extent, because what are you going to say? Go out there and just play 50%. I mean, this game, the games they play in are auditions for next contracts, for future contracts, for extensions. And, it's just the whole process of tanking takes so much, to the point where, look, if the Ravens aren't going to win, they're not going to win. Yes, they might get a couple more injuries here and there, but it's so unlikely. In fact, I think it is impossible if this team gives up in tanks. It's not in their DNA, and it's really not in a ton of these teams' DNAs as well, realistically. Our next question, we'll get into a few here from Eric Clark, who asks, long-term, what do we do to match up with the Bengals at full strength? I assume Eric's talking about the Bengals here because I've referenced them in the mailbag tweet. And, there are a couple things you can do, Eric, and it's a good question because the Ravens took 2 pretty big drubbings at the hands of the Bengals, week 7 and week 16. I think the first thing you got to do is just retool the secondary a little. It's not necessarily a rebuilding, right? You have talent there that you can build upon. You have Marlon Humphrey, you have Chuck Clark, but there are question marks surrounding Marcus Peters and whether he will be back next season. Jimmy Smith, is he going to retire? He's definitely not the player he once was. Deshaun Elliott, with his injury and him being on a contract year this season, is he going to be back? Do you trust Brandon Stevens? I would not be shocked if the Ravens did I'm not going to call it an overhaul, but a pretty big defensive landscape change or shift, especially in the secondary, where they take a corner high in the draft in 2022. I would not be shocked at that whatsoever, because I think getting back to the days where you had 3 corners playing at a high level, such as Marlon Humphrey, Brandon Carr, Jimmy Smith, or just some of those types of deals where you don't necessarily have to rely on 2 corners and then all of a sudden there's a sharp drop off. What are they going to do with Anthony Averett as well? It's just all these different players. Tavon Young, he is still under contract, but with his injury history, he's been relatively healthy this season, but still you got to always wonder about that. So for me, I think just getting revamped in the secondary, finding a couple more pieces there, figuring out what the deal is at free safety and whether you want to have Deshaun Elliott back or try to hand the keys to Brandon Stevens or whatever you want to do there. But yeah, like even Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, Jimmy Smith, those are the types of cornerback rooms that match up well with a team like the Bengals, who that we saw it. If they put too much attention on Jamar Chase, what the Bengals do, they went to T. Higgins. They have ways to make teams pay for double covering one guy or sending too much help this way. They can do that. And I think, the Ravens' run defense has been solid. That's less of an area they need to address. They do need probably some defensive linemen. But yeah, I think overall what this team needs to do is just figure out how to retool that secondary, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and then or on the defensive side of the ball for them. And then for the Ravens offense is literally just get healthy. They didn't have a ton. We saw what Josh Johnson could do with that group of receivers. Not a ton of healthy offensive linemen outside of Kevin Zeitler and Bradley Bozeman, who will be there probably next year, and maybe Ben Cleveland as well, who will be starting. We'll see. No running backs on the Ravens roster, or maybe even going to be in Baltimore next year. I would still feel like Devonta Freeman has a shot, but I don't see Latavius Murray coming back. Tyson Williams I don't see that either with the way it's gone for him. And obviously Lamar Jackson for the quarterback position being out there is a huge difference maker as well. So those types of things I'd look at. And our final question before we head into our first break, should Josh Johnson be our COVID QB in 2022, signed but kept in a remote location? This one also from Eric. And, Eric, it's funny. You and I are on the same wavelength here. I was thinking about this when I read up on the Bengals having a COVID quarterback, I think Jake Browning. And I thought, hey, that's a really good idea because, yes, the quarterback is away and quarantining away from the team and he's not there physically. But look, it's a good idea to put the Ravens in a situation where they know they have a guy on that roster who, if there is a COVID outbreak in that quarterback room, they know that they have a guy who is studying the playbook, knows the system, and can come in, as opposed to, the Ravens. Josh Johnson could have tested positive on Sunday morning, and then it's Kenji Bahar at the helm for them. So they have to kind of weigh it that way. I think it's a great idea to have that COVID quarterback, and Josh Johnson proved that he still has it, in my opinion. So I think that for the Ravens, it'd be really good to, maybe see what Johnson would want to do in terms of sticking around and maybe being that COVID quarterback. But if he wants an opportunity elsewhere, or if he's going to retire, whatever he wants to do, I mean, look, he's earned it based off of how well-traveled he is. We'll head into our first break, though. When we get back, we'll be diving into more mailbag questions. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be right back. It's the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. If yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, and it makes it easier to stick to your resolution because it tastes so good you'll want to eat it. Unlike other protein bars that can be chalky or waxy or even taste like a chemical spill, most Built Bars contain around 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein compared to other candy bars. That is much, much healthier. Even if you're not a huge fan of working out, you can at least eat something that tastes good and is good for you. And there are so many flavors to choose from. So go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off of your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. We returned here. It's our second segment of this Wednesday edition of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostreicher, your host, still here with you. We talked about some great mailbag questions in the first segment. We're going to talk about some more great mailbag questions here in this second segment. And continuing with Eric Clark, Eric asking 3 mailbag questions here. Again, if you have more than one, I'm more than happy to answer as many as you have. Eric asks, why is Crochet not in the slot all the time? And yeah, let's talk a bit about James Crochet. Crochet putting up numbers in week 16 for the Baltimore Ravens. And it wasn't just like, all these easy catches that were like, oh, he ran for a lot of yards. No, these were like tough contested catches, some of them. He got open. He was wiggling around. I mean, he played really well. And so to answer your question, Eric, why is James Crochet not in the slot all the time? I think it comes down to depth. A lot of these young wide receivers, especially in week 16, they showed they can play. Crochet, one of them, Tyler Wallace, we all know what Rashad Bateman can do. But, it's just, who is Crochet getting snaps over? And we can list it out. Marquise Brown, he is the number one there right now. Rashad Bateman is going to get more and more playing time. You have Devin Duvernay out there sometimes. And, my question comes down to, are you limiting Sammy Watkins and his snaps for a player like Crochet? And at this point, I might be saying yes. I think it might be time to kind of let the doors come off, let James Crochet charge through them and really take on a bigger role because, look, I've talked about how when Rashad Bateman gets the ball, good things happen. When James Crochet gets the ball in his vicinity, good things happen. He's catching it. He's snagging it out of the air. I mean, this player is unbelievable. James Crochet is an unbelievable football player. And it just comes down to if the Ravens are going to value the veteran or value the rookies / younger guys. I know Crochet is not a rookie, but, the Ravens have historically, not all the time, but it's been almost like, we can go back to J.K. Dobbins, right? I've talked about it time and time again, 25 carries through his first 6 games. He made the Ravens give him playing time. I don't think, the Ravens were planning to give him that much playing time early on, and then they were trying to work him in a bit, which, yeah, for a rookie, I understand, especially in a COVID year. But for Crochet versus Watkins, 2 somewhat different players. But, I think you put the best talent out there that wins the game. You can certainly use Crochet in the slot while using Bateman and Brown on the outside. You can flip-flop guys. And this is not me saying, oh, bench Sammy Watkins inactive. No, these guys should rotate in. And, Crochet is not going to be in the slot all the time, as good of a player that he is. But I think that he definitely has earned more snaps. It's just a matter of what the Ravens want to do with finding snaps for certain players and saying, all right, we're going to increase your snaps, decrease your snaps, and you're going to be inactive this week and this week and this week. So, I think Crochet is definitely earning more snaps. I am all on board the James Crochet more snaps train. And Eric, I know you are too, based off your question. Let's dive into a question here from Positive Vibes. We have a couple from him as well throughout the show. He asks here, are we really surprised we've overachieved all season and now all the injuries have caught up? Hashtag Fire Roman. Positive Vibes loves the hashtag Fire Roman hashtag. But, yes, Positive Vibes for this Ravens team, the injuries have certainly caught up. I've talked about on the show before how, look, they cap any team. Would you rather have J.K. Dobbins or Latavius Murray out there? Marcus Peters or Robert Jackson? The answers are pretty obvious. They cap a ceiling of any football team. A lot of people coming into this year were very excited about the prospects of the Ravens and what they could do this season with a healthy team. And they're just not healthy. They're the most injured team in the NFL, in my opinion. They've lost the most talent due to injuries, in my opinion. It's been a very, very big struggle for them. And I'm not necessarily going to say that, look, I'm surprised that injuries have capped their ceiling and have impacted their play. No, I'm not surprised at all. Look, it's what happens. Could Eric DeCosta have planned for that? Could John Harbaugh have planned for that, or Lamar Jackson or whoever? No, injuries happen at the NFL level. They happen to every team, but the Ravens have certainly been snake bitten by them for sure. But overall, it's been rough. The Ravens did overachieve for a little bit of the year just based off of the injuries they were dealing with. And now they're coming back down to earth because the injury gods have not slowed up. Now the COVID is going through the locker room. So it's stuff like that where it's just like one on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other. And so that's where it's kind of a little frustrating, a little upsetting because you're like, what could this season have been? So, yeah, I'm not surprised injuries have impacted them, but it's been a pleasant surprise still to see their fighting mindset and to have them not give up on the year and still be, kicking as they're still in the playoff hunt. Positive Vibes 0611 also says, also look at Miami, Cincinnati, Arizona, all have young, innovative offensive coordinators. Roman's offense falls flat every year. Why not bring in somebody who can take all this young talent and really make it go? That's not saying he's been trash. It's saying we need more. And this is something that, yes, same wavelength here again. I love being on the same wavelength with people. The Ravens, I'm not saying Greg Roman's a bad offensive coordinator. I think he is a very bright offensive mind, has been the architect of one of the better run offenses in NFL history before, as we saw in 2019 there. The issue that could kind of loom over the Ravens, if this is the case, is has the Baltimore offense outgrown Greg Roman? Because we know the strengths as a run kind of guru. We know the weaknesses as a pass type guru. The Ravens brought in coaches to help Roman out, which was great, right? It's a team effort. It's a coach effort. But I for the Ravens and what they need out of an offensive coordinator, they're still deciding, I think. Injuries, we keep going to it. Injuries have really, we haven't been able to see what this team has been able to do fully healthy. And that's been not amazing because you have Roman working with all these guys who just weren't projected to get snaps, weren't projected to do this, and it's been tough. But, yes, all these young, innovative offensive coordinators, they're exciting. They're able to take this young talent and do great things with them. So if Roman is not the answer, I think that Baltimore does have to move on, but it's a matter of them finding out if he is the answer. And that's why I've been very almost like non-committal because I just don't know what they're going to do. I literally do not know because there are arguments for both firing him and not firing him. I understand both of them, but the Ravens and what they need out of their offensive coordinator is going to be something that they need to determine over the next 6 months, next year, and then make a decision quickly because you cannot waste any more of Lamar Jackson's. Well, I mean, the rookie contract's almost done, but, waste any more of his prime. He's kind of going into it and they need to figure out how to use it. And our last question here from Positive Vibes, would you honestly tie the next 6 to 8 years of Lamar's career to Greg Roman? And I mean, I'm not ready to answer that yet. I think if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That's why I think it comes back to they need to figure it out in the next 6 months or a year and then make a move. I don't think they're going to wake up tomorrow and sign Greg Roman to a 6-year extension, then sign Lamar to a 6-year extension to be like, hey, here's our pairing. But at the same time, I think they do have to understand that if they are committing to this, they have to understand that it's right. They have to know that it's the right pairing because, You can fire an offensive coordinator at any point, but, you'd rather not eat the money from a huge extension like that. So I'm not ready to say Lamar Jackson and Greg Roman are the perfect pair. I'm not ready to say they're the worst pair in the NFL. Right now it's probably somewhere in the middle, and we'll see how it ends up pairing out for sure. We'll head into our final break. When we get back, we'll be talking about our final batch of mailbag questions. So stay tuned for that, and we'll be right back. We return here. It's our final segment of this Wednesday edition of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, your host, still hanging out with you here as we now dive into these mailbag questions, our final batch of them, as we round out this Wednesday episode in our final segment. And we'll first start off with a question from Menachem Gerstmann, who asks, if Lamar plays, will we see the hurry-up offense from the start or only when we're down in the fourth quarter? And yes, this has been a topic because we didn't see the tempo early in the game. I think that is something that should stay and will stay. It's something that has been effective for them. We've had Spencer Schultz on the show talk about it before, how when the Ravens run that tempo offense, when they don't allow subs, when they're able to call plays at the line and figure it out that way and just keep up tempo going, it works really well for them. And we saw it at the start of the game in week 16, and it worked for them. I think they should absolutely keep it that way. And obviously the fourth quarter thing, it just seems like the Ravens and what they have done recently on offense, maybe Greg Roman is starting to figure out some stuff that when Lamar Jackson gets back, he'll be able to incorporate with him, and hopefully so, because if he can incorporate some of these things that have helped the offense start off really fast, like this tempo really early, that helps out. So I think we will see it. I'm going to express confidence there and say we will see the hurry up from the start and kind of have the game flow be dictated from there. Our next question here, we'll get into two from Reckless, who asked one here, does Lamar play next week versus the Rams or give him an extra week of rest for the two following divisional games after? Well, the Ravens only have one game after the Rams game. They have week 17 and week 18. Week 17 is against the Rams. Week 18 is against the Steelers. But I understand what your question is and the point. So I think that if Lamar Jackson is still like 70%, 60%, you rest him. I'm not risking a longer-term injury or pain or discomfort or whatnot, because I still think that playing an injured player at that percentage level presents a couple problems. For one, you're risking re-injury. I think that's one of the bigger ones, of course. But two, if you know that a player is at 60%, you still put him out there, he's limited, right? For Lamar Jackson, who relies both on his arm and his legs in a big way, especially with an ankle injury and affecting his mobility, his ability to roll out of the pocket, to escape pressure. If he's 60% and can barely run on that ankle, and he's getting pressured all game, he's going to have to go down or stay in the pocket and whatnot. And look, we know he can throw from the pocket. I know he can throw from the pocket. He's a good pocket passer. But at the same time, something that makes him go the extra mile is the fact that he can make stuff happen with his legs. So I wouldn't want him to all of a sudden be limited, and then the product on the field is just not what you need out of him, much like we saw in week 1 with Ronnie Stanley against the Raiders, where he was not 100% clearly, and the results were not good because, he just wasn't able to play to his skill level, which was frustrating for a lot of people, but mostly for Stanley. I mean, it must have been very frustrating for him. So I think that, will Lamar Jackson play this week? Very, very early to tell. I don't have any information on that personally, but I think there's a chance. And I know people have been saying that all week, and so I'm kind of just riding that wave. But I think there is a chance. But if not, the Ravens feel confident enough in Tyler Huntley and Josh Johnson to get the job done or put the Ravens in a competitive situation where hopefully the defense isn't giving up 525 yards passing every week. But, oh, man, who knows at this point? Our second question from Reckless. I know the Ravens will try to win no matter what, but do you think it's worth it to make a push for a wild card spot, being the team is depleted, as we would more than likely get torched if we even make it to the divisional or conference round? And so, yeah, the Ravens have multiple areas to look at over the 2 weeks here as they end their year. I mean, for a wild card spot, I just think you got to win. You have to win, whether you make the wild card round or whatnot, or do whatever. For a fact, I know a team is not tanking in the playoffs. So for me, I'm not necessarily saying the Ravens, are going to make it or are not going to make it. They have to win their 2 games. They need to get some help to get into the playoffs. But, in terms of going for a wild card spot or pushing for a wild card spot, they're going to do that. They're going to try to get the division crown / wild card spot and playoff spot. But I don't think that the Ravens, being that the team is depleted, is going to say, all right, we're going to make it to the wild card round and then just not really do anything else because we don't want to get torched in the divisional round. I think if they make the playoffs, they're going to go as far as they can go, as any team would, because in the regular season, stuff happens, momentum shifts, and you end the year with a ton or with not a lot. But the playoffs, whole different season, in my opinion. So you got to kind of look at it that way, I think. But yeah, it's going to be a tough stretch for them to make it, but they certainly still have the ability to do so. Our next question from Bob Digital 710 here. That's the next person asking. The Ravens season is over. Let's not kid ourselves anymore. So, all right, more of a comment here. And I don't think the Ravens season is over. Now, I'll tell you when it is over. I mean, technically it's over after week 18, but I don't think 9-8 is enough to make the playoff. If the Ravens lose to the Rams this weekend, I don't think they make the playoffs. It would just be too tough in an AFC conference. I don't even know if it's mathematically possible, to be honest. I haven't looked fully over. I know that they need to at least win these final two games and have some help, but it's going to be rough if the Ravens lose against Los Angeles, entering week 18 against Pittsburgh, and then needing massive amounts of help to make the playoffs. They'd be a very, very low odd team to make the playoffs in that rate. So, you got to look at it from the perspective of, look, yes, the Ravens have season ending injuries. The Ravens have monthly injuries, weekly injuries, COVID, everything, but they've put themselves in a situation where they just barely didn't lose enough early or didn't lose a ton early. And now the 4 losses have hurt them. But yeah, I think 10-7 is enough for the Ravens to make the playoffs. 9-8 is not. So the season's not over yet, not over till it's over. But yeah, the 4 straight losses have put a damper on things. I understand. And finally, Overhaul the O-line asks, when's the draft? The draft is it's going to be an exciting time for the Ravens, especially because they're going to have a lot of draft capital. They are currently slated to have 10 draft picks in the 2022 draft that they can use in a ton of different ways, a ton of different areas, whether it is in the secondary, defensive line, offensive line. Do you draft a tight end? Do you draft a running back? Do you draft some linebackers, some outside linebackers? They have a bunch of positions that they could use 1 or 2 players at. And this is obviously before free agency as well. So who are they going to sign there? Usually the Ravens don't make a ton of moves in free agency. They kind of wait for the market to develop. We saw that in 2021. So yeah, there are a bunch of ways that the draft is going to help this team out. I know some people are looking forward to it for sure, but at the same time, the Ravens have built their team through the draft, free agency, and trades, much like any other team, but they've found many key contributors in later rounds, and the Ravens have kind of stockpiled those types of picks. So you can look at the flashy picks like the first rounders and the second rounders, day 1, day 2, but on day 3 and those types of picks and even undrafted free agents after day 3, there are a ton of players that the Ravens have been able to get that have impacted the team for years and years and years and years to come. So yeah, when's the draft? It's coming. It's coming slowly, but for right now, the Ravens are still playing football. I'm excited to see them continue still playing football. I know that 4 losses aren't fun. It's been rough, and especially it's 2 different types of losses, right? You can lose 3 games by a combined 4 points. You can lose 1 game by 20 points. Doesn't make it hurt any less or more. Whether you prefer blowout losses or close losses, there's obviously a preference between both. But for me, the Ravens are always an exciting team to watch, or at least they have been ever since the Lamar Jackson era has begun. And we've seen great quarterback play. There are a lot of positives to be taken away from this. And the Ravens continue to build their team through the draft and free agency and trades and also get players back healthy. I know a lot of people are kind of looking ahead to 2022 and saying, when the Ravens get Dobbins and get Edwards and get Peters and get Humphrey, and I could go on and on about that list, but people are looking at the 2022 season as one that's going to be quite the revenge tour for the Ravens. And I see it. I see it. Now, the number one key part of that is to stay healthy. You can't have a revenge tour and then get all injured again. But I do think that the Ravens have a ton of potential in the 2022 season, but that again does not mean the 2021 season is over just yet. The Ravens are still kicking. They're still fighting. They have a week 17 matchup with the Rams in a couple of days here. We'll be talking about that throughout the rest of the week on Locked On Ravens. That's all I have for you today here, though, on Locked On Ravens. We'll get back here tomorrow. We'll be diving into crossover Thursday with Locked On Rams. So stay tuned for that, and I will see you tomorrow.